Where do you draw the line between content, slop to be shoveled into your gaping maw, and art? Where is the line? Where is your personal line? Where are you drawing it? Yeah, good day, mate, and how the bloody hell are you? Welcome to In the Back of My Head podcast, episode 91. It's a creative journal where I rant and rave and ramble and carry on about creativity and whatever's in the back of my head, trying to sort out some shit, try and get on the straight and narrow, try and make some sense of what I'm actually thinking, what I actually feel about a particular topic, if there's actual worth to my thoughts, if there's actual substance. And if it helps you out in any way around your creativity, around art, around what have you, then bloody brilliant. And if not, don't worry, carry on, move on. But I hope that it does. I hope that it brings you some sort of calm as it comes to your creativity. Now let me throw my rucksack on this passing bandwagon as it trundles on by. Because I'm off Spotify, baby. Like many a user, like many an artist. No, you know what? I'll be honest, my art's still on there, my music is still on there. I'm contemplating taking it off. I get fuck all streams on it anyway. But I've stopped giving Spotify money. Stop giving Spotify money. And I'd like to say that I've hated Spotify for a goddamn long time. And the political stuff is all well and good, and the primary reason why I wanted to jump ship in the end. However, I've despised Spotify for quite some time as a user, as a platform for art, as a platform for music, as a platform for creativity in the human soul. Just like any other of the social medias or what have yous. They are there to house our beating hearts, and I can't stand the trash, the slop, the advertising that you are bombarded with upon the main page, the front page. The For You section has frustrated me endlessly to no end for quite some time. A lot of suggestions for podcasts that you don't listen to and you will not listen to, audiobooks that you do not listen to and will not listen to, especially paying top dollar through Spotify for the access to those audiobooks. The For You section for me has for a long time given me nothing. It knows what I liked. The radio is great. Spotify's radio knew what you liked, knew the styles that you're into and gave you that stuff. But on the For You page, the front page was always just, what's in the top 20? And podcasts I don't listen to. And I hated it. Couldn't stand it. Found many aspects of the Spotify experience a bombardment of ads, concerts that come into your area. Breaks the user experience for me when I'm just trying to listen to some tunes. So I was floating around the idea for myself of switching to a different streaming app for ages, and finally we arrived at a final straw, which was the one that you've all heard about, and I'll give you a quick synopsis of it. I'll give a quick summary of it, but you already know the tale that the Spotify CEO, Daniel Ek, invested 600 million euros, which is over 1 billion Australian dollars, real dollars, and he invested into an AI military company called Helsing that is bouldering down the pathway towards a Terminator-style AI apocalypse with military drones that are autonomous, and that's terrifying. Give a robot a gun. We've made too many movies about that to think that's a good idea. And Daniel Ek was part of the initial funding for this company. He invested over $1 billion real dollars into it. And through that we saw a mass exodus. We saw many an artist. And one that hits close to home, being local boys, is King Giz and the Lizard Wizard, pulling their stuff off Spotify and primarily focusing then on Bandcamp. And their 27 album catalog became the top 27 albums on Bandcamp. Hell yeah. But if I was to be cynical for a second, and I will be a little bit cynical in this episode, social issues aren't always the best for driving change when it comes to consumer practices. And by that I mean like a boycott in protest of a social issue often lasts only so long. I think that's shifting. I think things are changing. I think people are becoming a lot more frustrated. You could say, quote unquote, radicalized, which in my books is a good thing. But nonetheless, I think the thing that actually drives people away from a platform is almost always the user experience. How trash is the actual experience for the average person, and that's what will get people off the platform. And that's one of the main reasons why I want to get off, not Spotify in particular, but so much of the internet I want to move away from when it comes to consuming art, consuming human creativity. But Spotify is a great example, which is why I'm focusing on it, because Spotify has become a bit of a hellscape, as are other streaming services, but this one is the big one. This is the big trendsetter in the industry, the one that sets the terrible pay for artists, that sets that trend, the one that is flooded with AI slop. I came across this article that was actually kind of the catalyst for this particular episode, of an artist, Emily Portman, and she was getting messages on Instagram and other places, saying emails from fans congratulating her on some music that just came out under her name that she did not release, that she did not put out. And not only did she not put it out, she didn't make it. Quoting Emily, it was called Orca, and it was music that was evidently AI generated and had been clearly trained, I think, on me. And turns out that this is a trend at the moment on Spotify and other streaming services, because it is piss fucking easy to get anything on Spotify. I should know, I've put up a lot of shit, but I also spent a lot of time making that shit, and that's my choice to waste my time doing that. But there is a growing trend of smaller artists. It happens mainly to smaller artists. This isn't happening to the Drakes. This isn't happening to the Taylor Swifts. This is happening to the Emily Portmans of the world, where an AI piece of generated music will be uploaded under their name by a different person, but will appear on their artist page on Spotify. But the way that this works is that money generated, if any, sure, the streaming numbers suck and the pay sucks, but it takes you no time at all to create and upload this music in quotation marks, and say you make a few $100 from some streaming and it gets funneled into your bank account rather than the artist's bank account, and then the artist has to fight tooth and nail with Spotify or whatever other streaming service to get this music taken down off their profile. They target smaller artists because the smaller artists don't have the resources to fight back. You've basically got an email address, and you're lucky if you get that. You might get a chatbot loop. It took Emily 3 weeks to get Orca taken down. This happened to a local group, the Sweet Enoughs, which is by one of the guys from Hiatus Coyote. That was my first exposure to this concept, this idea that this was happening. Seeing them posting it on the Hiatus Coyote Instagram account. This happens to also dead artists that have passed away and maybe are no longer fighting these kind of fights. Their profiles can then get taken over by AI artists. And then there's the artists that are actually generated themselves. They have their own little page, an AI artist page, that are racking up millions and millions of streams. So they aren't leeching off other artist profiles, but they are nonetheless sucking out money from the system that could be rightfully given to the artists to actually make music. And this one you might have heard of. This one went a little while back. The Velvet Sundown, and they have 330,000 monthly listeners still to this day. And there's a streaming service called Deezer Nuts, that you might have heard of, and they're from France. And they put out an article recently, or they put out some stats recently that were caught on by a few other magazines and online publications and yada yada. And that was saying that 1/3 of all tracks that are uploaded to Deezer at the moment are AI generated tracks. And then that 70% of the streams of those AI tracks are bots. So bots listening to bot music, I guess that's kind of beautiful in a little way. They got their own little ecosystem. It's putting enormous strain on these nuts to filter out what is real and what is not. Resources that could be spent actually fighting for artists, paying artists, what have you. Deezer did say, of all the streaming numbers, only 0.5 of the songs streamed on Deezer are fully AI generated music. So that's sort of comforting. However, they did say that most AI music uploaded to their streaming service, and this is the same for Spotify, for Apple, and for every other streaming service. Most of it is done fraudulently. Most of it is done for fraudulent purposes, at least. You upload some tunes, you get some bots to listen to it. If you don't get caught, you get paid. If you do get caught, you just disappear and you do it again by a new name. And what this made me realize, though, was that this is like any other social media network at the moment. This is like any other website that you get to upload stuff to. Everything is being taken over by the lowest tier, the lowest amount of effort slop that you can possibly generate, then you are drowning in it. I keep using the analogy of the ocean, that you are drowning in the ocean of content, be it as a creator or as a user. However, you have to pay money to be on Spotify. It's not a lot of money, I'll tell you that, it's not a lot of money. You pay like $50 and you can upload as many songs as you like through DistroKid and a few other third-party distributors. But that's pretty absurd to be paying any amount of money. If you had to pay money to upload onto Instagram or YouTube with the assumption that you will never make any money off it, and then see other channels and other accounts just spamming absolute slop, you'd be pretty furious, you'd be pretty frustrated at the idea. And not to get a return on your investment, but for just the health of the ecosystem, just the health of the platform, just to have a place to share. If this is a town square where you get to go and share your work, and yes, you are drowning in the ocean of human creativity, as we can all create, and that's a beautiful bloody thing. But when the platform itself is rotting from the inside out, the very core of it is rotting and does not give you a place on it due to this nonsense. It's one thing if it's free, you can go elsewhere, but to be paying for it, as well for a platform that is the place to go. Because you can blow up on loads of different social media platforms, but your music goes on Spotify and Apple Music. But it feels like we're watching the rot of the only legitimate game in town. I suppose I wanted to use this then as a question that, is Spotify the canary in the coal mine? Now, I feel like we've had a whole flock of canaries over the past few years anyway of the dead internet theory, and I'm hopeful that something is going to turn around, that the internet is going to evolve with this new landscape, that we are going to find very, very different ways of actually utilizing it, and that these one-stop shop, that these global platforms are perhaps not built to handle this new technology and to handle this new mentality. It's curious to me watching it happen to Spotify, I think, because Spotify, unlike other platforms, is very inaccessible to the user. You have to go through a third party and you have to pay money to get onto it, and you don't have much control over your content. And I feel like that used to mean that it had a sense of legitimacy to your profile as a creative, that when you go and listen to an artist's profile, all their stuff is there, and it feels like much more of a product compared to just their Instagram profile. But if their Instagram profile or a YouTube page or anything else, a personal website would be better, has all of the music available to stream, it feels like a more legitimate place to go and get that music. Spotify is a walled garden, but the garden is infested like the rest of the internet, and it's worrying watching it be run over, be taken down like this. Spotify might be fine, Spotify will likely be fine. We have watched large corporations, large platforms go down before, and we'll see it again and again and again, but I might be being dramatic around this, but this feels like a real turning point to me. Things are escalating rather rapidly, of the degradation of the internet as we know it, and to continue to be dramatic. Came to the realization this is quite a good representation of the broken social contract in society. As I've been making music and putting stuff online for a long time being, 12 or 13 years or something along those lines. And the point of this podcast, and the point of a lot of things that we say to one another, is to remind ourselves that this is all made up. None of this is really real. This is all luck of the draw. But it's still hard to remember that. And you are bombarded constantly by things that you need to do and platforms that you need to be on in order to get your stuff out there and to play the game as a musician or as a creative in general. You must do these things and then you might actually succeed. And it's the same frustration that we see in a much broader sense. And again, to be dramatic, to conflate two different points. When an entire generation is told that you can work hard at a pretty standard job and you will be able to buy a house and you will be able to raise a family and you will get all the things that your parents got, and then you're going to get out there. And I'm pretty fortunate. I've got a very, very chill existence. But I ain't got no kids. I ain't got no car. I have no hope of buying a home of my own. But I see other people work an absolute shit ton. Absurd hours, working themselves well past the point of reasonable exhaustion, and have nothing in comparison to. They still have a pretty good life because they're chilling in Melbourne, but they still have nothing in comparison to what their parents had, or more importantly, what you were promised. It was a social contract that if you went and studied. You're seeing this a lot. You're seeing people freaking out because the degrees they have gone and gotten are being deemed useless due to an incredibly hostile job market, one that is also being overrun by AI. Not necessarily AI taking jobs, but AI part of the hiring and firing process. Very fucking bizarre. And I don't have enough knowledge to really rant and rave about all of that for too long. But I do know about what you are told you will get if you do certain things, if you play the game. And we live in an age of people finding out that they're not going to get what they were promised. And to me, this is a particularly silly hill to die on, but I'm seeing that in Spotify and these other platforms, that the promise of your art finding an audience was in this bountiful garden. A bountiful garden of opportunity. If you play the game right, you will find fame. If you pull the lever one more time, get one more spin in the slots. If you market yourself correctly, you might find something. Which I still think is true. Obviously, it's still true. The internet is still a giant, beautiful slot machine that you might luck out on one day. But these platforms themselves are rotting to their core. And pretty soon, I think there will be very little left for the audience or the artist. So, doom and gloom. What am I wanting to do about it? What am I actually doing about it? And this is a very personal thing. This is just like, these are my personal feelings around using these platforms. I don't enjoy using them anymore. And I still am using streaming services and things like that. I'm still on all these social media platforms. It's going to be a slow journey, but I'm trying to start on that journey. And again, it came down to like user experience, because I really give a fuck about art and music. And the artists, the musicians that I have discovered that have been my favorite artists have completely changed my life, have completely changed the way I see the world, have completely consumed me, shifted me on my axis. And there could be an element of nostalgia here, but I really got to thinking of back in the day of listening to music on my iPod as a child, as a teenager, owning CDs. At one point owning a few records, never a record player, so that was kind of foolhardy, but having some sense of not ownership, but collection. A collection of music, a collection of art. And I found myself too often forgetting what was in my Spotify library. of having no clue, of having no library. I didn't really think about it for a long time. It was kind of an insidious, slow shifting of how we approach listening to music, but I've always been someone who listens to albums. Whereas we live now in an age where you listen to the radio, and by that I mean like Spotify radio. You listen to the algorithm of music, which can help you discover some new things. And I've discovered a lot of amazing artists through algorithms. Don't get me wrong. But in terms of actually like investigating and cherishing an artist, learning an artist, knowing an artist, placing them delicately in my collection of art that actually really got me thinking, for better or for worse, that doesn't really work anymore. Spotify just isn't built for it. The way that you can organize and search the music that you have saved is abysmal. And so I spoke about this actually fucking months and months ago, but I'm trying to get more into it. Is building a music library, which is unfortunately very daunting. And I think that's why it's taking me so long. It's why it's being very slow to actually happen. Is because you have to go back and find all those albums that meant everything to you. And if you haven't got physical copies, if you've only got a loose collection on Spotify of saved stuff, it is tedious to go through and move that all across and to download it, because it's hard to download MP3s. I've only found a couple of websites where it's actually like a viable option to just download MP3s or a WAV or what have you, whatever format you want, of an artist that you like. If they're independent and they're on Bandcamp, bloody beautiful. So I've dedicated more time into building up my music library in an app called Music Bee, and this can be done on many different music apps, and so I'm not going to sell you on that particular one. I don't even know if it's the best, but I'm trying to download music and have it on my computer, and it syncs to my phone, and I listen to it. And in the simple process of like unzipping a folder and making sure all the tags are correct and organizing it so that everything sorts correctly in your computer and then in your music software, so all of your contemporary jazz records are collected in the contemporary jazz section compared to the 90s boom bap hip hop section, I've found myself much more invested in listening to the albums again, which has been an absolute pleasure. And I think it is just that, it's that intent. It's sitting down and intentionally doing a thing for the art is for the time being helping me reconnect to that sense of a collection, a library, a purpose to actually having all this stuff. As a quick counter, I had one thought on this, is that potentially, if that was to become a trend, if streaming does become way too bloated for the average user and people start buying their music again, there is the potential that there will be less of a chance for people to spend money on independent artists. But now I'm saying, because it's a risk, because you take a risk by buying a record, but then I say that because thinking like that's physical media. We'll still live in the age where digital downloads will exist, so independent artists will just put out their music for free, as they already are doing it on Spotify, even though there's the opportunity to earn streaming revenue, but you won't. So I counted that point as I even said it. And this has gone hand in hand. This try and download more music and actually catalog more music has gone hand in hand with a much bigger shift, which has been the actual bedrock of this intention for me, because I'm trying to do it with all the art that I consume. And that is using a new note-taking app that I've got called Obsidian, and you might have heard of it. I don't know why you would have it. It's like stupidly over the top. It's the geekiest note-taking app I've ever encountered, and you don't need to use Obsidian. But rather than tell you what Obsidian can do, I'm just going to tell you how I'm using it, what I'm using it for, and that is taking notes on everything, on all of the art that I consume. Also, everything that I create as a creative, all of my lyrics and all my ideas for tabletop stuff and all my thoughts on video game stuff, everything is all in there. And it's all tagged and all collected and all organized into folders and categories and topics and yada, yada, yada. But the thing that it's really helping me with is being much more proactive and intentional with consuming art. Because everything that I consume beyond the most casual of things. So I'm not putting notes in there for my Bob's Burgers consumption. I'm not putting notes in there for every album I listen to, or every game that I listen, or every game that I play. But all the books that I am reading, which is slowly, very slowly, but any book that I read goes into this note-taking app. And I'm keeping notes, journal entries about the book. I'm doing it with games as well. And I'm jotting down my thoughts, and I'm jotting down my opinions and information on every movie, game, book, album, poem that I enjoy, or that just gets me thinking. Don't have to enjoy it, but it gets me thinking. And this is not something that you have to do, but it is the intention that I have found that is bringing me back to this. I am someone like everyone else, I suppose, that just consumes unholy amounts of content. Podcasts and shows and games and books and music. And it's all the best thing. It's so good having everything so goddamn accessible. But it also means everything just becomes this bombardment, this endless stream of noise. And I'm trying to pick apart the noise and give a shit about it all. Love it all. Be it that I actually enjoy a piece or don't enjoy a piece, I still want there to be intent behind my consumption of it. And I wrote here, the reason is not to create better art, though this is a hopeful outcome. The goal is to meditate over art, be present and interactive with art. Run away from consumption. There's so many counters to what I've said today. There's so many good things about streaming. There's so many good things about endlessly accessible art. But a feeling that I have experienced many, many, many times, and that I cherish in others, and that I cherish in myself when it happens, is obsession. Obsessing over a piece of art. My favorite thing is watching YouTube videos of people just making 4-hour-long videos about one episode of a TV show, just picking it apart beyond any reasonable level, and just doing it with glee and delight and absurd obsession. It's so human, it's so delightfully human. And there is a lot of that. So again, not to be all doom and gloom, because the internet has given us so much good stuff, and we're going to continue to do such good stuff on it. But we're living in a peculiar time for these platforms, watching them rot from the inside out. And these platforms are where we consume art and put our own art. And I'd like for art to be a bit holier than that. But to really fucking mean something. At least to yourself. So that's my answer, what I'm trying to do with it. We'll see if it actually works, see how long I stick with it, and we'll see what platforms I get off. So I guess for anyone listening to this, how are you being more intentional and active with your consumption of art? I want to find a better word for consumption. For your enjoyment of art. And are you obsessed with things? Do you have the space for obsession? Do you give yourself space for obsession? I hope you got something out of this episode. I'll catch you on the next one, mate. Be well.